Welcome to the Level Up Life podcast. I'm your host, Scottie Hobbs, and welcome to this episode. Today, we're going to have a conversation with Jamil Frazier. He's an entrepreneur, keynote speaker, author, and business consultant and investor. He grew up on welfare, Section 8 housing, and food stamps until the age of 18. His father was in and out of jail. His mother, an alcoholic and drug addict, raised sometimes 6 children on her own. Jamil found his solace and refuge in sports and great friends. I'm excited about this episode where we are going to learn the shifts that happened in his life to help him get to a place where he owns multiple businesses and impacts thousands of lives. Jamil, welcome to this episode. Jamil, I just want to start out, we just had a little conversation for like 20 minutes and I loved every part of it. I was like, we should have been recording that, but we'll capture some awesome content for our people here.
We'll get it.
So who are you, man? What do you do?
Man, that is a really good question. I would say first and foremost, Scotty, man, I appreciate you. I've been all over your social media. I've listened and consumed your podcast. And I think, you know, you're one of those people that, when you walk into a room, that room gets better.
Yeah.
And just from looking at your content and really seeing, you can feel the heart coming through. So I just want to appreciate you for even having me on in this sacred space. Really appreciate it. But yeah, my name's Jamil Frazier. I am a business and wealth consultant, but I grew up in a city called Pasadena here in Southern California. Single mom, dad in and out of prison, grew up on welfare. My mom is one of those moms, and I'm sure your audience can attest, is just kind of puts the whole world on her back, but she had a really hard time growing up. Both of her parents died within a month and a half of each other.
Oh,
She's the oldest of 6 kids, and so she took on all that responsibility. I think the straw that broke the camel's back is her youngest brother, who's 13 years old, got shot and killed on the streets of Pasadena. And then from there, she didn't really know how to cope with it. So she turned to drugs and alcohol. And that was the life that I was born into. We were on welfare basically from the time I was born to the time I went to college. And that was the life that I knew. But I got inspired right around the 8th grade. I met some guys that were going off and playing college football, and I decided that that's kind of what I wanted to do. I saw how they were getting championed in church, and I just kind of wanted some of that energy and met some great guys and just fell in love with sports. Eventually got a football scholarship to a great university, got out of school, got into pharmaceutical sales with Johnson and Johnson, and then had some difficulty. Got married, which you would think would be an amazing sort of event, and it was until it wasn't. We got pregnant right away, and that kind of did a doozy on me. I wasn't ready. I was scared. I never really had a father, and so I didn't know how to necessarily be one. And the only thing that I knew how to do when trouble came, I mean, the whole fight or flight, and I wanted to run. And so asked my wife if she would consider having an abortion, which probably shouldn't do. And she said no. And so I had to figure out, do I want to stay here or do I want to leave and sort of continue the same cycle? And didn't know what to do. Ended up falling into a 2-year depression, put on a tremendous amount of weight, and not just physical weight, but mental weight. And was trying to climb my way out of it. Decided to kind of change the situation and take control of what I could control, which was my health. And so I went on a health journey and man, just wanted to feel better. I think that's basically what it comes down to. I wanted to finally feel like I had some control in my life and had an opportunity to start a business from that, and that's really where everything turned around. Just went on this crazy run. Like I just got super motivated and ended up building a really big business, a really big organization. And then from there, got into the investing space, the private equity space, and now we have a company that I'm a founder of now called Think Life is Different, to where we consult business owners with their businesses and their personal finances. Wrote a couple books along the way, best-selling author, speaker, and now have the pleasure of sitting here talking to my guy, Scottie.
That's awesome. That's beautiful, man. As I'm listening to you, there's a lot of things I just want to dissect and learn from you about. Like one of the things that really stood out to me was, you didn't come from the best situation,
Yeah.
but you've turned things around to where you live a beautiful life. Like you're married, you
Hmm.
have four beautiful children that you love, and at one point it was like wanted an adoption. Like there's just so much polar opposite in where
Yeah.
it was to where it is now. What are some of the things that you think contributed to the shifts that happened in your life to get you to where you're at?
Yeah, I would say the biggest one is the realization that I'm actually in control. I think when I fell into that depression, I think just from the life that I lived, and I think most people kind of feel like this at some point or another. It's like I'm out of control. These things are happening to me. And I started to learn that these things are happening for me. And that wasn't something that I ever knew before. I always waited. I waited when we are on welfare. I waited when I got out of school. I was waiting once I got married, and I was waiting for sort of life to show me what it was going to be. And then I think once I started my first business, I think I started to learn with the help of mentors and books and personal development and trainings and all the things that I'm actually in control and these things aren't happening to me, they're actually happening for me. So I think just a realization of consciousness that I can actually think about the things that I think about and the story isn't fixed, but that I could actually control the story. That wasn't stuff that I knew, Scotty. Like
Yeah.
I went to school, I graduated, I did all the stuff, but those things I was never taught how to think. And I think with the realization and just the understanding, the education that, man, no, you're actually the dominant force of this story, and you can start to create what you want the outcomes to be. I think that's really where the first shift came. I actually remember it. Like I was sitting in our little apartment, 700 square feet, man. It's like me, my wife was super pissed at me because I had asked her to have an abortion. Um, 2 years later now have a 1 year old. I just quit that medical sales job to launch a business, and I'm listening to a guy named Jack Canfield, the author of the Chicken Soup for Soul books.
Yeah.
And I remember in his video, old grainy video from like 1985, man. Like, look at our quality, it's so nice. But his video was so jacked up. But he was teaching on a concept called E plus R equals O. The events that happen in your life are things that happen to all of us. The R is your responses, and the O is the outcome. My problem was I never knew how to take control of the R. My responses were always led me to unfavorable outcomes. And what I learned was if I just start responding differently, I will have different outcomes. And I never knew that before. And I remember like getting out a whiteboard after watching that video. And I was like writing all this stuff down. My 1 year old son is sitting there watching me, like, what the heck is daddy doing? But that realization, that shift, I think changed everything.
That's awesome. So if you were to look at or speak to someone that is maybe they're in high school, maybe they're starting college and they're in that situation and their action, what was it? Not actions,
The
what was the formula?
responses,
The
the
responses.
responses. Yeah.
The responses are not giving them favorable results. What would be something that you would tell that person if you're sitting across the table from them, this high school kid or this kid that's in college or this newlywed? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would tell them to first and foremost really figure out what it is that they want. And I know it's so cliched and so many people say that, but I didn't know. I knew what I didn't want. Like I didn't want to struggle, I didn't want to be broke, I didn't want to sit in my room sucking my thumb, I didn't want to sit in depression, but I didn't really take the time out to decide what I did want. And I know that sounds crazy, but I just didn't for some reason. And so I think once we get really clear on what it is that we want, for me, I realized the number one thing that I wanted was to have a stress-free life and was to be happy.
Yeah.
That was it. Like those were the two things. And now, if I'm speaking to this 18-year-old or this recent college graduate, now we can start to set up the path to start moving towards what that desired outcome is. For example, let's just say that this person wanted, happiness and fulfillment. But then when events came up in life, maybe they didn't get into the school that they wanted to, or maybe they decided to get engaged and the engagement fell apart. That is going to lead them to doing something. And the thing that I would ask them is this thing that you're going to do going to move you closer to that happiness and fulfillment, or whatever the thing is it going to keep you the same, or is it going to move you further away?
Yeah.
So whatever is going to keep you the same or move you further away, that is an unfavorable response. It's not in alignment to what you want to create. I would tell you don't do that. And I would tell you to have consciousness about it. And I would tell you when you automatically want to do it, then to actually start thinking, is this serving me? Is it serving me to be my highest self? Is it serving me to earn the money that I want? Is it serving me to reach happiness and fulfillment? Is it serving me to build the business and the life that I want? And if it's not, then I need to be able to switch the way that I'm going to respond about this, and only respond in ways that's going to take me to where I want to go. I didn't know how to do that. And most people don't, because we're not taught to. We're taught to, like, two plus two and, 15
Yeah.
minus five and all those things. And we're taught really great things, golden rules and all sorts of stuff, but we're not really taught how to think. And so I would encourage them to just start to define what it is that I want, get some help. I've been so lucky with beautiful mentors that have poured into me and helped me see things that I couldn't see, and to start practicing thinking about the things that they think about.
Yeah. As you're saying that, I'm thinking of objections that they might say or they might be facing, including someone that's my age and your age as well. And it's going to take an enormous amount of effort because the world is more distracted than ever too.
Mm,
They
yeah.
with their Snapchat, their Instagram, their TikTok,
Sure.
instead of taking that time to think, a lot of times they're waking up, getting on, snapping people, sending Instagram,
Well,
doing all that stuff, right? So it's going to take a conscious effort
yeah.
to put those down and set aside time to think and discover what they really want. Get that
And
clear.
that's the hard part. In order to be different, you literally have to be different. And
Yeah.
so they're going to have to make the decision, do I actually want to be different? Do I desire it, or do I just desire the thought of having it? And those are two wholly different things. And so you're right. There's so many different distractions. And so I always, talk about, these D's that we live by. And one of the D's is you might have to change your road dogs. And your road dogs is your environment. And I always say your environment, your zip codes, are going to eat you. And so, meaning where you are, who you spend your time with, that oftentimes is going to make or break you. So if we're in an environment and we're comfortable being in an environment to where we can be and we're allowed to be distracted, to people around us are distracted, there's nobody helping us level up, like Scottie's podcast, right? But if that's not there, then you have to consciously change your zip code. You have to consciously change the people you're around, so that you can actually have, um, the space that is going to sort of that's going to help you raise to the levels you want to go. I mean, we know this. I think innately we know this,
Yeah.
but it is just hard to do. When I was on welfare, I lived in a neighborhood that had a certain zip code. And folks in those zip codes did certain things, thought certain things, and are okay with certain things. When I lived basically in a middle class neighborhood, I lived around people that did certain things, thought certain things, and had certain habits. When I bought a $2 million house, I lived in a neighborhood where people did certain things, thought certain things, and expected certain things.
Yeah.
So our environments are so key. So for a young person who is finds themselves being distracted, one of the first things I would ask them is to look around, where are you? And more importantly, who's around you? And if you want to move to a space that is going to help you level up, then you got to consciously change who you're around.
That's beautiful. We could end this right here. We're not going to, but that's a beautiful reminder for everyone, and it's something that we all know, but at times we get distracted and we forget that that is important.
Yep.
So, I got a question for you. What's a hardship? I mean, you shared some hardships that you went through, that your mom went through, that you've
Sure.
been through. What's a hardship that taught you the most in your life?
I would, for me, that's an easy one. I've been through a lot of difficult things. I think facing divorce was probably the hardest thing that I had to ever overcome. Like I don't know about you, but I got married, I think I was 27. I think my wife was 23.
Okay.
And I didn't know what I was stepping into. Like I thought I knew because a lot of friends were getting married around the same time. Like I had this cadence. We were going to weddings all the time. People were getting married all the time. It was like, what's the next step of life? You get married, and then everybody starts talking about, having kids, and then they start talking about like, oh, well, maybe we should look into buying our first house and all this stuff. And I didn't know what I was asking for. And, we sort of set these lavish plans to, oh, let's travel the world and maybe 5 years, we'll think about having kids. Man, we got married and like a couple months later found out we were pregnant. And, you know, there's a lot of resentment that's built up if a husband comes to his wife and says, "Would you like to have an abortion?"
Yeah.
Probably not the best thing to say and probably not the best place to be, but that's where I was. So you can imagine resentment that had built up over years and years and years, the conversations about divorce, the decisions that had to be made. And so getting to a place of where it's like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to run like your father? Or are you going to stay here and you're going to take care of your responsibilities and build something amazing? Very tough to do. Very tough to change who you are innately to become somebody who someone else needs and desires. And that was really hard to do. I didn't want to get divorced. I didn't want to keep sort of uh, continue the same cycles that had happened in my family for literal generations. And getting to a place of where I could change myself enough to now have this person love me and forgive me was the hardest thing by far. And, now we have 4 kids. And so, breaking and shifting, as you said, and changing and aching and studying and developing and the conversations and the hurt and the pain and the desperation and the frustration and the fights and the makeups and the breakups, um, and the not quitting, not giving up. I've built a lot of things in my life. That by far was the hardest and taught me the most.
I love that. I don't know if you've seen on my Instagram. My main mission is to help remind people that their families are the most important work on earth. And so, like you sharing that right here is just like hits my soul. So, I love you for battling for that.
Oh my gosh, man. It's so easy to give up.
Yeah.
It is so easy to throw in the towel. I made a YouTube video years ago. She had left. And I had this conversation with my friend. And we're sitting there, and oh my goodness, this goes back to the thinking part in the early years. But I'm complaining like like people who don't find a lot of success do is complain. Oh, Got it. I was the best complainer in the world. I had a PhD in blame and victimhood and complaining. Those were the three things that I was really, really skilled at. And so my friend said something to me, and she says, what? She says, you're really good at creating stories. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she goes, well, you have a story in your mind that, your wife is uses you and she's trying to trap you and she doesn't bring value and all this stuff. She goes, you are so good at creating stories. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she says, what if another story was true? And I said, what do you mean? And she says, what if the story was like you come from an amazing creator, like God put one woman on this earth specifically for you, that this one person has skill sets and traits that help you level up, and it doesn't take something away from you, but gives something to you. And what if this one person on earth was your wife, Amanda? What if that story was true? And I had no idea what she was talking about in the moment, but a day or so went by and I was like, oh my God, I have an ability to just make up stories. And if I'm going to make up stories, why don't I make up the most beautiful stories for myself?
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in that same tiny apartment and I was like, dude, if I'm going to make up a story that my wife is um, a liability, then is it possible to make up a story that she's an asset? And I remember running to YouTube and I like made this long video to send her because she left. She went to her parents' house, took our son, which was a main motivation. If we did not have him, I have no idea why. I'd probably be broke and just all jacked up. But he was a main motivation was having him. But I just remember on his YouTube video, I was like, oh my gosh, Amanda, like, I think that I've been creating stories. I didn't even know what I was talking about, but I was like, I think that I've been creating stories, and these stories of like have seen you in the light of a liability, you're not an asset. I'm just going crazy because it was the beginning stages of learning that as human beings, we are really good at creating stories, and it's really easy to quit and to throw in the towel when it gets painful and it hurts because we don't know how to flip those stories.
Yeah. And that can be applied to not only your marriage, but to your health and well-being, your ability to sell,
Oh,
your ability to
oh,
invest, the
everything,
stories that you
man.
tell, everything.
Everything.
Also, some power in, as I was listening to you, we kind of talked about your area. You were talking about your area code. You could have very well have been surrounded by people that said like, yeah, she is doing that to you. Yeah, man, this is the time for you to get out and go live your life. And I think a lot of times when people don't pay attention to the area code, the people they're spend their time with,
Yeah.
our lives could take completely different paths. So I think it's God's
I think
calling on
it's
your life,
I think
bringing
it's
that person into your life at that time.
well, I think it's natural and it's easy. There's a saying that we all know of birds of feathers flock together. But also as human beings, like we have to have synchrony. I think a long time ago, we realized just as a species that it's a lot easier to survive and to eat and to live if we're around people who think like us, who champion us, and who sort of fan our flames. It takes a lot of consciousness to put yourself around somebody who isn't just going to champion you because you're handsome and you're Scottie. Like to put people into your corner that's going to say, like, no, dude, what you're doing right now is not serving you, and you're not a leader and you're ruining your life from going down this direction. It takes a lot of courage to have those people around you, and it takes a lot of um, conscious decision making, and it sucks. Like I want to be around people who say good things about me, and I think that that was one of the blessings that I had for sure was I did have a handful of people around me that told me the truth, and they cared more about my success than they cared about me being upset. And I think it's so important to have those people around you that one is that actually want to see you reach your highest self, and it's going to tell you the things that you don't want to hear in the moments and times to where you probably need it the most.
Yeah. So going on these stories, Jamil, kind of feeding off of that, I had a message come into me today
Mhm.
that said, "Hey, maybe I just suck at sales."
Mm,
That was a message that they gave. What would you say to someone that comes to you? Maybe they're trying to build a business, trying to invest money,
mhm.
sales because you did sales with pharmaceuticals. It sounds like, and then got into some other sales. What would you say to someone that says, maybe I just suck at this? Maybe I'm just no good at sales.
I would say two things. First thing I would say is that serving you? Is that thought serving you? And I would say, what do you want to create? Well, I want to create a big business. I want to start earning $10,000 a month or 15 or whatever it is. I want my wife to be proud of me as a husband. I want my kids to revere me. I want to, get myself out of this corporate job, and I want to have a business for myself, and I want to have time freedom and freedom of options and financial freedoms. Awesome. Okay, great. So, is what you're doing right now, is that serving you to create those pictures? Is that serving you to create those realities? No. Okay. So, are those thoughts keeping you where you're at? Or is the feelings and emotions that's coming from that thought now pushing you further away from the picture that you want to create? Well, it's pushing me further away. I don't feel good about it. Awesome. So, how can we change that thought right here in this moment to be a spiritual, a God thinking thought that's actually going to help you create to what you want? You just created a story that maybe you're not good at sales. That is fantastic. You're a human being and you have the ability to do that. No other life form can actually do that. That's what makes you special. Now, how can we change that story in this moment to actually get you to where you want to be? What's actually true? Well, what's true is I just, need to practice a little bit more. What's true is I need to take a little bit more no's. Or what's true is I'm actually really great, and it's just the path that it takes to move into my greatness. Awesome. How's that make you feel? Makes me feel good. Cool. Go do 30 more calls.
Yeah.
You know,
Beautiful.
so, I mean, it's everything that I've been telling you. When you asked me what was that shift, that literally what we just did was that. Is that you can create whatever it is that you want. Here's the problem. The problem is we're human. The problem is our natural biology is going to look for ease. I mean, Abraham Maslow told us this in the hierarchy of needs. Like we want to feel nice and lukewarm and safe and comfy and no problems. That is the antithesis of success. Like that that is the opposite of what happens when in 2014 I was broke. My wife was about to leave me. I had no relationship with my son. I lived in a tiny little condo. By 2020, I bought a $2 million house. I had a whole book of real estate. I was investing in businesses. How the heck does that happen in 6 years? I had written two books by that time. Like my net worth had gone from zero to millions. Like, how's that happen that fast? It's because you learn that success and frustration and pain, they are inner R. They are locked in the hip, like they are best friends. And so it's not that you suck at the thing or you can't do the thing, it's that that thing gets required. That same struggle or whatever it doesn't matter what it is the way to getting to where you want to go. We can't run around it. We can't try to hide from it. We have to learn how to embrace it because it's like I said at the beginning, it's not happening to you, it's actually happening for you. You not being good in sales isn't the problem. Your thought about you being good in sales is the problem.
Yeah.
This whole whatever has happened isn't like to make you run away from doing the thing. It is to show you that that is what you need to do the thing. Like you got to go through that. And I think just as human beings, we don't like that. And so we would rather not do the thing than to do the things that's going to lead you to the things. And that's pretty much like the answer for whether we've been talking about relationships and marriages. We could talk about health and fitness and working out and doing those things. We could talk about building businesses, which we've both done. We could talk about investing. People don't invest when they should because of the same thing we just been talking about right now.
Yeah. Talk to me about that. What's some of the mindsets around that? Because I know that's one of a lot of your expertise is in investing and
Oh my gosh.
treatment. So
Yeah, there's so many mindsets. I love working with entrepreneurs. I've spent the last decade helping entrepreneurs build businesses. But entrepreneurs at the end of the day are people. And even though they're building businesses and some like, you and myself and some others have done pretty well for themselves, but we're all human beings at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, human beings tend to do what human beings do. So some of those things is like we have these limited beliefs about ourselves. I'm black. I grew up on welfare. What makes you think that I can invest? Nobody in my family has ever had money. Nobody's ever owned a house. What makes you think I can invest? I'm a woman. I live in a man's world. Investing's for men. I'm an entrepreneur. My business is doing great with revenue. I'm buying all these things I probably should not be buying. I'm just going to replenish the income next month. Why should I delay these gratifications? It doesn't make sense, man. It goes against who we are, right? Like I'm making X, Y, and Z in revenue. I'm making all this money. I see all these other entrepreneurs, they're wearing, Rolex watches, they're buying all these beach homes and all these things, right? They got trailers, they got ATVs, all this stuff. I should probably have it too. Not doing that actually goes against the fundamentals of being a human being. I told you, for us to feel a certain way, for us to feel like we're a part of something, for us to feel like we're whole, for us to feel like we're a part of a community, for us to feel successful, is saying for me to feel safe. And one of the things that makes me feel safe is to do what my community and my environment is doing, even if it gets me in trouble. So when it comes to investing, there's a lot of mindset that goes into why people don't do it. The actual being successful is not difficult. I was just having this conversation with someone. Usually it takes four or five things. That's pretty much it. Whatever we want to be successful in, it takes about four or five things. I could ask you right now, what do you want to create? What do you want to be successful in? I want to drop 20 pounds. Awesome. What are four or five things if you did it every single day for like the next 6 months would ensure that you lose that weight? What are those four or five things? They would say, well, I need to drink some water and I need to lower my caloric intake and I need to work out and I need to get some sleep and I need to be a little bit more mindful. Awesome. Go do that for 6 months straight. I guarantee you will lose weight. Well, Jamil, I want to build up to my first $1 million in the market. Cool. What are four or five things? If you do this over the next 10 to 20 years, will automatically guarantee you have 1 million invested. Well, I need to stop spending so much, or maybe I should have some automatic savings. Maybe I should like not go on those trips. Like there's only four or five things that if you do over time, you're going to get the thing.
yeah.
But we don't like doing those things because it makes us uncomfortable. We have to delay gratifications. We have to do things different than other people are doing. And it goes against our natural human biology, the coding that's happening behind my voice and my eyes and all the things. And so they're not difficult to do in terms of like step one, step two, and step three. They're difficult to do because you're going to have massive discipline. You're going to have massive delayed gratification. You're going to have to make really strong decisions. You're going to have to change the people that surround you. And it takes effort, and we don't like doing it. And you're going to have daily activity You're going to have to be really consistent. And we just don't like doing it.
Yeah. Man, I've been having this conversation over and over. I'm like, man, I just wish you could get inside of my mind and look at myself how I look at myself and just realize that I'm just a normal guy who just understands that you got to sacrifice. You got to be consistent if you want to learn or master any skill. You got to believe in yourself, have clarity about what you want, and delay the gratification. Like we're so a small example, we're building our dream home, and I lost my completely lost my business, found that out on September 30th.
Mhm.
And my initial response was fear of like, we got to sell this
Sure.
thing. It's going to be done in May. I got no income here. But it was just initial fear response. But we've delayed gratification in the case. Like I live in the same home that my wife and I bought as newlyweds as we brought our first daughter in, and we invested in properties and have Airbnbs and and it wasn't even until I've been building the businesses for 15 years. It wasn't even until like 2 years ago that
Hmm.
we like our vacation homes have slides in them, swimming pools, obviously air conditioning, lazy rivers, like
Right.
lakefront, lake views in our home here. I got a swamp cooler blowing paper plates off our dinner table even 2 years ago. So when people so when people
Yeah.
see they might see the story like this dream home that's being built.
Sure.
It's like, we delayed the gratification. Like I drive the same truck that I bought in 2012, live in the same home, the primary home, but to put all the money that we earn into investments, and that's how we
Yeah.
can do what we're doing, even though we got put in a situation we're in where I kind of had to start over in a way.
So why did you do that then? Right? I mean, because that's different. Most people would not do that. What made you guys delay those gratifications and like why did you do that?
I think in the very beginning it was fear in a way, because the thing that started with fear.
Mhm.
Because for me, like this home we live in, it's a beautiful home. It's a 6 bedroom home. We now have 5 kids, so we all have our own bedroom. I got my own office space here, but with just one 3-month-old daughter, buying a 6 bedroom home was not probably the best starter home.
Right.
And so as I started my career, I was a dental lab technician before, and then I moved to Idaho Falls, that's where I'm from, and I was like, I'm gonna get a dental lab job here, and I got offered $8 an hour, and
Okay.
we got this
Wow.
house, and I'm like, what do I do? So I went to my old church leader. I worked for him throughout high school, throughout college in a steel factory, and he's like, you can work 12-hour days. Like we got all the overtime. I know you're a hard worker. You can work all the
Mhm.
hours you need. So just to pay the mortgage on this house, like I worked 12-hour days for 5 years straight. From 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. My wife worked at nights at the Hilton Garden Inn from 3 p.m. to 11. So we lived these two separate lives.
Yeah.
And so when I started building my business, the first goal for me was like I need to spend time with like I envisioned this life where I'd have a beautiful home and I'd eat dinner with my wife and my kids and kick soccer balls in the front yard. And just for 5 years, we didn't do that
Mm. Mhm.
because she's working night. It's like two separate lives.
Yeah.
And so when I started my business, it was originally I didn't want her to work anymore. Like I was willing to work. I'll build this side business at night, and then my goal was to bring her home from work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was able to do that, and then as you achieve goals, you've probably experienced this. You're like, okay, if I could do that, I could do the next thing, and so that transition forward. And I won't tell the whole story. Maybe if I'm on your podcast someday, I'll tell the whole story. But my audience has heard it enough. But I got to this place where like, well, I wanna be home with my kids too. Like
Yeah.
like so
Yeah.
so I built that. Within 14 months, my wife and I were both working full time from home after starting my first business. And so I've been a full-time dad now for almost 14 years, stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
So the first thing for me was like I had so much like I worked 12-hour days for 5 years just to pay this mortgage.
Mhm.
So for me it was like I'm getting rid of that thing. Like I'm getting rid of that mortgage. And so for me, I didn't need fancy cars. I didn't need the best outfits. And I was like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna pay that thing off so I never have to worry about a mortgage again.
Yeah.
And so I set a goal over the next year and a half to pay off my mortgage, and everything that I earned, I just dumped into my house. And so that was the first thing. It was like fear. Like I don't want to spend time away from my family, work tremendous amounts of hours just to pay for a mortgage.
Yeah, so that
So
makes sense. Like
yeah, it was
that's the
fear in the
catalyst,
beginning.
you know? That
Like
that
I'm
that fear
getting rid
is
of
the
this debt.
catalyst. And so that led you to do something, that led you to do something. I mean, it probably led you to the first D, which is desire.
Yeah,
You know, like you just have to want it.
yeah,
And that's the thing that it's funny because I think I have spent I'm 43 now. We were joking about that at the beginning of the call or before we came on, because I forgot that I was 43. I thought I was still 42, but a quarter of my life has been spent, wishing that I could give that desire to other people. Like I had spent over a decade just saying, man, I wish that I could just stick a needle into you that had like some magic potion that would just make you want it.
yeah.
To just and I don't know how to explain it. I just know what it is once I see it.
Hmm.
And it's something that you can touch. It's an energy. It's infectious. Like I love being around those type of people that just want it. And you had a catalyst. And a lot of times that catalyst is going to come from some sort of desperation to where you're just like, dude, no. Like this is the last day. This isn't going to be us. It's not going to be our future. This isn't going to be my plan. Like this is not going to be my reality. No. And sometimes it comes from inspiration. You're around people, you might hear a song, you hear a sermon, you're at church, you're around a whole bunch of like successful people. Maybe you see some people walking across the stage or getting an award, or you watch a Super Bowl and just like boom, just like that, you're like, oh my God, like let's go. And then that's the thing. But it all starts with like you made a decision, you had massive desire, you delayed a ton of gratifications, you had daily action, and you changed the people you're around. And it's amazing how those D's will lead you from a place of obscurity a lot of times to a place of massive growth. And success and failure is the same. You know, failure picks up energy and attracts more failure. And we've all seen this in our lives, right? Like I mean, think about it. Over the holiday season, probably a lot of people weren't eating that great, and that those habits kind of led to maybe sleeping in a little bit more, and those habits led to maybe not moving their bodies a little bit more, and that habit led to maybe being late to work a little bit more. And so those things pick up steam and pick up energy just like success. So you start to see some success, you're like, dude, if I could do this, I'll freaking do something else. If I could pay off this mortgage, man, let me go get some rental property. I can get some rental property. Let me go build a business. If I could build a business, let me write some books. And like that starts to pick up energy as well. And it's amazing how that happens, but it usually follows those sort of steps. Like we get desperate, we get inspired, we make some decisions, we have some massive desires. We decide to do some daily actions that other people aren't willing to do. We have some delayed gratification, which doesn't feel great, but we usually will stick with it because we see something in the future that's much bigger than what we see right now. We change some people that's around us, and we do this over a certain amount of time, and voila, you have the thing.
You're there
You're there.
and you're where you want to be. And then
Yeah.
when you get there, there's always going to be some more struggles.
Yes, and then the goalpost moves.
Yeah.
Like you're like, I thought when I got here, like it was gonna be, and then it moves, and I always say like your next bout of like success is gonna come in the next frustrations
Yeah.
because they're married to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. What's your favorite part of your career, of your what you do with your life's work?
Man, I think it's helping people. I think when I was when I quit my medical sales career, I think that it wasn't helping people. It was I want to make like as much money as humanly possible. And then I realized that's really hard to do if you don't lead from sort of a transformation standpoint and really what the heart of serving people. And I ran into a lot of issues with that. And so I think the best part is just seeing the transformations. I think that's what keeps me going. And I also like that I think that I'm pretty good at it. You know, I like being good at things. And I think seeing the transformations, seeing people win, seeing people happy, um, that's probably the ultimate thing. I think what's also have driven me, you know, I have these things with my kids called the Frazier philosophies, and so I think what also drives me is they they have a completely different reality in their childhood than I had in mine, and so watching them kind of pick up on a lot of habits that my wife and I have and business principles, and they'll watch something like this or listen to this, and it's just different. So I love the fact that they get to be impacted by that as well. They've always have worked in our businesses. They may not like it, but they do. We've run so many different like events and stuff like that that they've had to set up for. And so I think that that also gives me inspiration as well. Even something happened the other day. We had Oh, I was looking for sort of like a cell phone policy. Like my son is 13 and he has a cell phone now, which I'm like, gosh, I wish I didn't give him the freaking cell phone, but we did. And so I was looking for a contract, right? Like a sort of covenant between him and my wife and I. And I saw in the contract and it said something like, you know, just remember that everything you put on the internet will stay with you forever. So even if you're going to go apply for jobs later on and so forth. And I remember downloading that and I go, how interesting that they put on there, even when you go apply for jobs. And I changed that and I said, even when you start hiring employees.
Oh, I like that.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I love about doing what I do is they're not going to think the way most people think. And even in something as small as that, I've changed it to, you know, when you start hiring people or when you start investing in really big land deals or whatever, right? Like it's just a different way of thinking. And so I like being on that journey to really pass that down to them as well.
Yeah, it's beautiful. They pick up on the way you live your life and
Yeah.
apply that to their. My daughter left me a note. My 15-year-old daughter left me a note. It's like, Dad, wake me at because I had to get up at 5:15 to take my other daughter to cheer. And she's like, wake me at 5:15. I got goals. And so I woke her. She wanted to come to the gym with me. She had her schoolwork on the laptop. I was doing my journaling and vision casting I do every morning. And she was doing that. And then we worked out. And one thing I love about her is talking about the clarity of what you want. She's
Mm,
like, she's like, Dad, she's a competition dancer. She's like, I'm gonna go dance for the Miami Dolphins or the cheerleader dancer for the Dolphins, but they only make like $100 a game. So I need to be able to start a business so that I can do that for fun and have a way to make money. And it's
yeah.
cool because it's she's seen what I've done ever since she was two. You know, I've been
Mhm.
doing stuff like this, so it comes into their life a little like that.
Yeah, it transfers in whether we wanted to or not. Like a lot of times I think that my kids aren't even listening, you know.
Yeah, I
I
feel that thing sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably maybe, you know, not just me, but I'm glad to hear that that happens in your house too. But you know, I have these like, you know, car ride universities, and so we'll drive and we'll just like look at real estate and I'll say like why would that be a good buy or why would that potentially not be a good buy and all that stuff. Been doing this for years, right? Since they're like 2 years old. And I remember walking down the street with my oldest boy, now he's 13. And remember just like talking to him about, oh, that's a distressed property and just going through the whole thing. Totally didn't think the guy was listening to me. And then later on at the dinner table, you know, we start to talk about something. And then he regurgitates almost word for word what I had said earlier, you know? And I go, oh, so this stuff is trickling down. Like they may not seem like they're watching or they're listening, but I think some of it is seeping through. And I love that, especially because I think for me, um, my parents didn't. My parents weren't like 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 they weren't talking to me about this stuff. They didn't run businesses, and I think you mentioned it earlier in the episode, but I think not only is the family like the most centralized unit within the home, I think it's one of the most centralized units to decide how society is going to go. And so the fact that we get to have these sort of conversations and they get to watch what my wife and I are doing, I mean, means so much. I mean, I, I think every parent wants their kids to be a little bit better than them or a lot of bit better than them. And for us, we want our ceiling to be their ground floor and for
Yep.
them to just keep like taking that legacy and to build on that.
Yeah. Beautiful. I want to circle back just a little bit. I think this was, I'm trying to recall if we were talking about this before we started the episode or this was after
Mhm.
we got started. What was like the how do you word it? Like the pinpoint, like that pushed you of believing in yourself or that there was something out there better for you. When did that happen for you?
Yeah. So it happened in Washington, D.C. And um, so I had gone on that health journey that I talked about. And in order to do that, I hired myself a coach. And as I got healthy, she says, you would be really good at doing what I do. Like I think that you could go help other people get healthy. And she had known me for a long time, knew I played college football into lifting weights and all the stuff. But I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur. I saw myself as a worker bee. Like, I don't think that I'm very talented at all. And I definitely don't feel like I'm all that smart, but I've always been able to work hard. I feel like that's kind of my superpower. So I didn't see myself as like, helping clients get healthy or doing anything more than that. I saw myself as working at Johnson and Johnson, going to doctors' offices, like trying to make my sales, that sort of thing. And so she just sort of pressed me and she says, there's a seminar that's coming up that I think you would get a lot of benefit from. You seem to be in limbo with your life. Your wife is, sort of mad at you quite a bit respectfully, and as she should have been. Like, you should come check it out. And I think just being around that environment, watching all of these entrepreneurs and watching these guys just absolutely crush it in life. And more than anything, I found out what I wanted, and that was happiness. Like, during that weekend, it was very, very clear to me that I wanted happiness, I wanted a stress-free life, I wanted fulfillment, and I wanted to keep my son um, with me. And I met a young black guy at the event. His name's Courtney, and he just walked over to me and started talking and was telling me how he had, left his career to build a business and how his life is so much better for it. And then a little while later, I saw him with his wife and his daughter, and I just envisioned I could see that being me. And I was just like, dude, that's it. Like whatever is happening right now, like that's it. Like I've seen it. I've seen enough. I felt enough. And I went home and a month later I quit my job and I was just like, let's do it. Let's see what happens. And it was that moment. I remember though a lot of people being afraid. I was a little afraid too. And there was a moment to where I didn't have belief in myself. I remember a couple months later, I was like, oh crap, what did I do? Like in my job, I was making six figures. I didn't even have a freaking client. I had maybe a handful of clients when I quit, but I wasn't making any money. I was really scared, nervous, unsure. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just go back to school and maybe I'll get a degree and like maybe I'll just become like a physical therapist or something. And I went and to a couple different colleges here in Southern California. And I just remember the last one I went to, I was like, how much schooling am I going to have to do? And they told me, and I said, how much? am I going to have to take out in loans? And they told me, and I just sat in the parking lot, in my little Prius at the time, and I was just like, I might as well just put all my eggs in this basket and just build something beautiful. And I was like, all right, let's go. And but that was the catalyst, Courtney, if I had not seen him, if I had not sort of been in that environment, I'm not sure that I would have had the urgency and even the belief to go after it. But that was the start of everything.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh man, I was thinking, as you were sharing that, I was thinking when I was working my 12-hour shifts, like I knew that's not what I was supposed to do for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just knew there was something else out there. And from when I was little, I always knew that I was going to do something great with my life. I thought I was going to be an MLB player. Uh, and
Okay.
I got to play the Little League World Series, a lot of other things, but that I quit. And I found out that I quit very easily at things when I was a teenager. And in college, I dropped out of college. I quit college, and so as I get married and in this phase of my life, like I remember getting out. I ran a service department at this steel factory.
Hmm.
I wrote like the specific thing. I'm retired at the age of 50,
Mm,
paid off my house, and I have $1 million in the bank. Like
let's go.
three, it was just real clarity of what.
Yeah.
And then kind of like you sitting in your Prius, like I just remember I'd walk around the shop, I'd go out to the back fence, and I just do all the math. Like if I get to like the highest position in this company, like I would like investigate numbers, like how much is the head engineer making? How much is the head salesman making? I'd only been there for like 4 years.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I can get there. I can work and get to any of those positions. I just did the math and none of the math worked out. If I pay this extra amount to my house, if I put this much in savings, like none of that, I couldn't make it work for
Sure.
that goal. Like retire at the age of 50, have $1 million in the bank, and have my house paid off.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of for me where that bigger dreaming kind of started. And like I started a sign business because I worked in the steel factory, started custom making, like just started trying things, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it started for me of just like there's got to be something else, a
Gotta be
different way
something
out
bigger
there
than
for me
that.
to live.
I
And I
think that I think that I felt that a little bit, but I think the fear kind of held me back. Like
yeah,
I remember my wife and I, like we were I remember us wanting to design a product. We just had a baby and a lot of frustrations, as you know, you have more kids than me, it's crazy. But there's a lot of frustrations that come, and so I remember one of the things that we were struggling with our son, and we're like, how can we solve this problem? And so we were going to design a product, and come to find out, like a guy had already developed a patent on it. And so I do remember going up to, go find him in Santa Monica, California to try to buy his patent off of him. But I think I didn't have the courage. That was the biggest thing. Like we could have done those things, but
yeah,
I didn't have the courage. And because I didn't have the courage, I was fine with staying where I was at because it wasn't terrible. It's not what I wanted, but it was familiar. And I think what happened was I um ended up seeing more evidence, for one, meeting guys like you, right? Putting myself around guys like you. Like I started putting myself around guys that were saying, like, why don't we go on a journey to earn in a month what we earned all last year? And I'm like, dude, people think like that? Like, what are you guys talking about? Like, what? Like, what is Scottie talking about? Like, what? No, I'm going to work and I'm going to go work my 8, 9 hours and I'm coming home and I'm chilling. And so I think being around guys like that who just thought differently and seeing a little bit more success, and then finding some people that allow me to borrow their vision and their dreams until I could see my own. Like, I wouldn't have never thought to become a millionaire. The reason why that happened was I had a mentor that told me one day, she was like, a true story. Her name's Kim Fisk. She wrote a beautiful book called Monster Under the Bed. And she says, "Hey, you should think about becoming a millionaire." I was like, "Word? Really?" She goes, "Yeah. I I go, cool, bet, like, let's go. And she goes, no, 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 not for the money. And I go, not for the money. She goes, no, to see who you can become in the process. And I was like, oh my, she's on like some Jedi mind trick stuff. Like that's what I was thinking, man, 32 years old or whatever. And but without that, like I had to borrow understanding and vision from people like you to help me get to a place where I was like, oh yeah, like I guess that makes sense, but I wouldn't have thought about a lot of those things on my own. I had to be around the Scotties of the world.
Yeah, you got to be around those people.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest shifts I've made in my life recently. It's like Saturday morning, like I got to be to my kids' basketball games and cheer competitions and all that stuff. But one of the biggest shifts I've made recently is I just have four guys that we meet together.
Mhm.
And to give you an idea, one of them makes quarter a million a month. And I'm like, I just need to be around people like that. Not because that's what I want to do, but they think differently and they challenge. And in our conversations, I'm like, hey, I don't want you to be like, hey, as we launched our company, I was number 7 in personal sales. And
Mhm.
when there was a 3-month period, I came in and did it in like 25 days and
Mhm.
got number 7. And I'm like to him, I'm like to these guys, I'm like, I don't want you to come in and tell me like you're awesome, you're doing good, or when things are challenging, be like, hey, it's all right, like you gave your best effort. I'm like, no, I
Yeah.
want somebody that's going to tell me, no, this is where you need to improve. If you want to get to the
Mhm.
next level, you have to do this, or you have to serve at this level, or you have to sacrifice doing this thing so you can achieve that thing. And I think we need people like that help us think different, challenge us to live differently and expect differently of ourselves.
And we don't know what we don't know. Like I have four brothers. All of my brothers have felonies. I'm the only one that doesn't. And I don't say that to disperse them. They're all amazing human beings, great fathers, but it is what it is. Like that's my story and that's our story and that's where we come from. And people will ask me all the time, like, what's made you different? And I go, I got lucky. Like I got lucky in so many different ways. And one of the ways that I got lucky was um the the just for some reason, man, like people have been brought into my life to just see things differently than I do. And I think to your point, when you put yourself around folks like that, they have a different knowledge, understanding. They're just further ahead than you. And so they can see things differently and be able to pass down that wisdom. I just met a guy yesterday at yoga, um, and he is 67, super cool guy. Like, I want to be best friends with him. I told him that. And so the conversation we had was so beautiful. He texted me last night. Um, but you could tell just from talking to this guy that he knows some stuff. And I feel like we've done okay in life, but you could just tell from talking to this guy that he knows some stuff. So I asked him for his number and I asked him if he wanted to be friends because I want I want to learn from him.
Yeah.
I really do. This past year I got a new like financial team to help us. And I think the folks that we had before were good. I mean, they did really well by us, but this new team is just further ahead than them. And because they were further ahead than them, they were able to even look at our finances and tell us some strategies that the other team couldn't tell us. Got us back like a lot of money. That it was not that the other team wasn't gifted and good, it's just they weren't as far along as this new group of people. And so that's the same thing that I feel like I'm hearing from you is like, I want to be a part of this group of these four guys, not because they're balling out of control, but because they just see things differently. They're further along and can help me become further along. And that's probably, man, one of the biggest cheat codes for success. It's just like find those people, don't try to be the biggest one in the room. I'm always like I'm quiet and I just freaking listen and I'll ask questions and I even make myself look small. Like I don't know nothing, man. Like I haven't done anything. I don't know anything. Like just tell me because I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes. You're saying stuff. I got
I
notes
saw
right.
you taking some notes and
I'm taking notes, man. I'm just taking notes and I feel like that's how you can win the game a little bit faster is just put yourself around those people and and really really listen and use your discernment.
Yeah. Take those notes, listen. Discernment of how can this apply to my life? What can I take action on with this? Well, let's to kind of wrap this up, Jamil. I'm going to ask you, like, what's some just last piece of nugget of wisdom that you could to give to somebody to
Yeah.
just bless their life?
Well, you know, I'm the founder of Think Life is Different. I got inspired to create that company in the build Think Life is Different because, man, like you, I've helped a lot of people have a lot of success, build businesses. But the thing that really inspired me to create Think Life is Different is um, people are people, and people still do what people are going to do, and I would say one of the biggest things that I wish for people is that they're a little bit smarter with their money and their finances. You and your wife done an amazing job early on, and you saw something a little bit bigger. A lot of entrepreneurs squander their money, and so that's where we got the inspiration of really like leaning in to think life is different. You know, business consultants, wealth consultants, so here's what I would close on. No matter how much you are making with your business or your W-2, set the goal to have your passive income either match your active income or exceed your active income. And I wish that I would have started out with that. It took me probably 3 or 4 years with building our first business to realize that like I always was looking at the income that was coming in. And then I had a mentor of mine tell me, she says, "You still look at your monthly income?" She goes, "I don't even do that." I go, "What do you look at?" She goes, "I only look at the income that I get from my passive investments." And I was like, dude, am I doing it wrong? You know? And so that's why I really encourage people now, and how we shifted the way that we started doing things years ago was how can I get enough investments going so that whatever is happening passively is superseding whatever it is that I'm doing actively. And I would say that's probably one of the biggest things that I hope for people, and if I can encourage them to do anything, is to start with the end in mind.
That's beautiful. As you say that, I'm like, I think about that, and I'm kind of like that mentor that you had, that woman that shared that with you,
Mhm.
in the fact of like, I've heard some people be like, they get stressed at the end of the month about what numbers are at and where they're at with all these things. I'm like, man, I never looked on the end of a week, pay week, or end of a month,
Yeah.
or where it was at, and never concerned myself with that, um, because I wanted to, when I build a business, I want to do it not out of the stress of am I hitting X amount of numbers, or revenue and whatnot. I'm doing it because I love the work that I do.
Mhm.
So if you have those passive, like you're saying, with whether it's rentals or investments in the stock
Right.
market, whatever, you're teaching, and we'll guide people to some of your resources on the as we wrap this up. But if you have those things and you that's coming in, you can, the work that you're doing for that active income, you can just do it out of love and not out of
Exactly.
necessity. And
Exactly.
then it's more fruitful. Then it becomes more fruitful when you do it out of love versus a necessity.
Yeah. And I think most people, again, here's the thing, is like most people are looking for, freedom, whatever that freedom is for them, right? Like the freedom to have a peace of mind, freedom of financial wholeness, your freedom of time. You talked about wanting to be with your kids. Most of us are looking for those things.
Yeah.
Most humans desire that. And so if you can get to a point to where you are, delaying gratifications and really stacking assets, that eventually it's going to give you those options to have whatever that freedom is, whether it's freedom of the peace of mind, or it's more time, or it's just financial security, or it's the ability to give freely, whatever those things are. That's going to come from, being a little bit smarter and wiser with the income that you're making. And if you have a bad month as a business owner or sales individual, who cares? Like, you know what I mean? Or you have a bad year
Yeah.
or 2 years or whatever, because so much of your income is being offset by what you have put away in the investments that you have. And I think that that just most, and even entrepreneurs, man, are sometimes the worst because we're so gifted a lot of times, especially when you become really good. And we're like, man, I'll just make that the next month. Like, let me go buy a freaking like Ferrari right now or something because I'll replenish it next month. But business is finicky and life is finicky and it goes in cycles, lots of up and downs. So you want to prepare.
I love that. Well, Jamil, where can people come learn more from you, grab your book, learn about investing
All
and
the
assets?
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Instagram, YouTube at the real Jamil Frazier. Think Life is Different website, thinklifeisdifferent.com. And we have a great team. We love helping people and serving people and really appreciative of you, man. This has been amazing. Thank you
I
so
love
much
it.
for having me on. And I can't wait to continue the relationship and stay connected.
Same here, brother. I appreciate you and thanks for being on here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Season 2, and we hope that you enjoyed the content that we shared with you today. We're here to remind you that your family is your most important work on earth, help you feel better, and learn how to earn more income for your family. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a positive review and share it with a friend.